Okay, hi everybody. Here we are, and we're taking a look at the keyframing and animation of this character. So what I'll do is I've already pulled down the file, as you can see, and note here that I have already created the rig, so I've connected the things that belong together connected. So that is all done, and what we're going to be focusing on right now is creating the poses, as you're going to be doing for your character as well. All right, I'm also at 100% in terms of viewing the composition. The window's at 100%, which is fine. And so you can see here that got the little walking character. And the first thing that I want to pay attention to is I want to show you the importance of having your rulers out. So you can see, you show and hide the rulers by going to the view window. Now the reason that we like the rulers to be out is that we can pull guides into our composition, and so that's a really useful thing. So there's two guides that I think are essential, and one is the guide that sets the foot position. I'm moving this around, I hope you can see it, but in my case, this is the lower guide here, and then the upper guide is a guide that I place that kind of lets me understand where the head position is when I have to move the body up and down. All right, and so let's go ahead now. I'm just looking at the leg, and I know, for example, that the lower leg is connected to the leg, and that the foot is connected to the lower leg. And so right now I'm in the transform menu of the upper leg, and you can see that simply by moving the rotational point here that I can move that leg around. And so that's where I establish that very first position of contact. One other thing that I think is really important is to know when I'm rotating, notice that I'm rotating from this anchor point. Okay, that's really important. If that anchor point was anywhere else, let me go ahead and, if I had that anchor point, for example, in the middle, or I wasn't really paying attention to like where I had that anchor point, let's get back out and let's look at what that would look like, right? So now the anchor point is somewhere completely different, and it's like rotating the leg kind of in a center way. So obviously I don't want to do that. And so the position of that anchor point is absolutely essential, right? So let's make sure that we're back here, and that's fine. So how do you get into that anchor point again? So for each of your layers, all you do is you double click, and that brings you into the individual shape, and this is the anchor point right here. And so if you needed to move that anchor point, you can. I'm just going to keep my anchor point there where it is because I've already set up all these anchor points. But the anchor points determine the point of rotation. So let's take a look at, again, we know where the leg anchor point is. That's fine. Let's look, though, at the lower leg. Where is that anchor point? So if I go to the lower leg, that's this one right here, double click on it, and I've placed that lower leg anchor point sort of like right at the top there so that it connects with the bottom of the leg layer. And then, of course, let's go ahead and get back to the composition. And then, of course, we have the foot. Let's check out the foot now. Okay, so when I double click on the foot, you can, whoops, I'm sorry, that's still the lower leg. I want to get the foot. Okay, so now when I double click on the foot, I can see that the anchor point is right at the edge of the foot. So this represents all of the kind of areas that would articulate in these poses, right? So the foot's kind of like representing the ankle, the lower leg where that anchor point is representing like where the knee would be, and things like that. So anyhow, that setting of your anchor point is really very important. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's come back to the composition. And now what I want to do in the very first case, and just to make sure that I'm completely back to where I was, I'm just going to reset my animation just by going back to my saved state, which is to revert it, which is fine. And now I'm just going to flip open the leg again. and going to go to the transform, and I can see exactly how I've placed all of the keyframes. All right, and pretty important here. And so I'm placing the keyframes relatively close together, right? So about every 5 frames, I've got a keyframe here. And so that's what's kind of determining the speed. It's kind of determining, you know, the way that I want the animation to flow, so to speak. And okay, so, and then what am I actually doing? So the first thing that I'm doing with regards to all of this, because I think the most critical thing is where is the placement of the foot? Because the foot has to be on that line, right? And so as I'm going through, because the foot's connected as it should be, so what I'm doing is I'm making sure that that foot is on that line and that it is pointed in the right direction, okay? Now, because of the fact that that foot is connected, we can have that rotate, right? We can have that do its thing, and that's fine. So so that's kind of my first place that I start is the foot. I think that makes most sense. And then I just kind of move to the second, you know, to the next pose. So in the down position, so that's my contact position. Now in the down position, I'm also paying attention to where the foot is. I can see, for example, that maybe this could be a little bit more bended and that would bring the whole character down a little bit, but that's fine. Let's keep it like that. Now let's go to the up position, or the passing position. And so now we see that leg is very straight, and that's raising the body of the character. But again, I'm not changing anything. I'm not going to the body yet and moving the body. What I'm doing is getting the action of the leg correct. So as you're animating, one of the things that I think you could do that might make sense is you could actually just turn off the body. Okay, and if you want to turn off the rest, that's fine, but you can just go over to the little thing there and you can just look and see, are the legs acting the way that they should? Okay, that would be the first thing. And then once you're sure of that, then you can come in and get the body. And now, again, you want to make sure that you're raising the body where it makes sense. So let's go ahead and take a look at these keyframes. Okay, so you can see that the body is going up and down, right? And so it's the up and down position of the body is aligned with the keyframes of the walk cycle. So for example, let's go ahead and click open the leg. You can see that, you know, that the body movement going up and down is aligned with the 4 main positions that we see in the walk cycle. All right, let's take a look. So we've got contact, down, up, passing. And now let's take a look at this 5th one. Look at the 5th position and then look at the 1st position, okay? There's the 1st, there's the 5th. 1st, 5th, right? So where does that go next? So now, rather than bringing this leg way up to the front again, now we kind of work with it in reverse, right? So now we go there, 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 and there. So what happens is, after the whole cycle, that position and that position are the same, okay? The same. Let's look at that again. Okay. Now, you're also at the same time, not just doing the front leg, but you're also animating the back leg as well. So there's the leg 2. And you can see again that those keyframes are exactly in the same position. Let's take a look at leg as well. And just so I can get all of this on the screen, let me raise this a little bit. So you can see again, those keyframes are all falling within the same space. And again, for me, I space them about 5 frames. It's kind of up to you how you want to do it. So how many total keyframes do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So a total of 9 frames. And the reason for that is that we can match the 9th frame to the 1st frame. And that gives us that the seamless nature of that walk cycle that we can eventually loop it. Okay, so that's that. I hope this makes sense to you. So you're just establishing keyframes just like you did before, but your keyframes are based on these walk cycles. And then of course, walk cycle poses. And then of course, do remember the arm. The arm also has to change. Now, in my case, I just set the arm up to swing at a little bit of a different rate. And I do have the paws also. Let's go ahead and look at those. The paws are also sort of like a little bit off. I actually set that up kind of purposely so that the paws would react a little bit differently. So do you see there's the beginning position, and there is that position, and then I just let it go. And so the paw kind of like goes back and forth, kind of easy. Now you most likely will also have a joint, so you know, for where the elbow would be, so you'll have to take that into consideration. Now let's look at a few other things. What about this pinning that's happening? How am I doing the tail? So let's go to the tail. Here it is. And one of the things that you're going to notice with the tail is that I use this thing called pinning. And pinning is really easy and very, very simple. It just takes the, all you really have to do is just go to the pin, figure out where you want to place the pin. Like let's put a pin there. Okay, so that'll give me like 4 pins, I guess, in this thing. And so again, we're using our the same old method of keyframing. Okay. And so each of these can be keyframed individually. And so in the case of these things, you just kind of move them around as you would like. Go down to the next position and then just kind of move these around. Okay. So pinning is actually really easy and I think very effective. So the movement on the tail is done with pinning, and then the movement on the ears is done with pinning as well. Now, the next question is, how about the eyes? How do you go up and down with the eyes? Like, how do you get them to close? And that's like super easy. Let me find the eye here. Oh, I'm sure it's just right in front of me. Ah, here we go. So this one is really easy. I have basically 2 layers, eyes open and eyes closed. And so if we look at these, let's go to where the blinking actually occurs. So at this point, eyeballs open are at 100%, and then I go to the next frame here, and I reduce at this point, I reduce that to 0. Okay, and then the next frame goes back to 100, and then I do exactly the opposite. Down here, starts at 0, at this frame open at 100% opacity, and then closed. So the transform that's happening there is purely based on opacity. So am I seeing the eyeball or not? Very simple, very, very simple. So anyhow, that just about does it. I hope that gives you a pretty good idea of what to do. Now, in a separate movie, we're going to cover the background that you see here, which is a panning background. And let's not put that in this movie, though. This is a very easy, it's just a positional move. But I do want to talk about the creation of the background, because to make it seamless takes just a little bit of understanding of how to do that. It's not at all hard. It's just kind of understanding it. So we'll cover that in a separate movie. And that is it for now. We're not going to render today or anything, but at this point, I would recommend, of course, that you save your file. Save and save often, okay?